Hey everybody, and welcome back to Geeked Out. First off, I want to apologize on behalf of Juan and myself for the gap in our schedule. Some things have come up that could not be avoided, and therefore it has delayed our recordings just a little bit. Furthermore, the episode you're about to listen to on Spaceballs was recorded a few weeks ago, near the beginning of May, so I just wanted to give you a heads up, especially when we reference things like Star Wars Day. That being said, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy. So here's us talking Mel Brooks' Spaceballs. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Geeked Out. My name is Kyle.
And I'm your brother's cousin's friend's former roommate, or Juan.
This week, just a couple days ago, it was Star Wars Day. So we decided that we were going to watch what I don't think is even up for debate, probably the most famous Star Wars parody movie of all time, and we watched Spaceballs. Now, before we go into details of the film, I'm guessing that some of you are wondering why we didn't just do an actual Star Wars movie, and we kind of discussed amongst ourselves, off pod, obviously, off mic, and it was kind of discussed that if we did one of them, we were probably going to be compelled to do all 9, and while I'm sure one day in the future we might get to that, I think that was just too big of a commitment at the moment to do all 9 of them at once. Not in one podcast, but in a row. So instead we decided we were going to watch this. And I think I really enjoyed it. I'm assuming you did. I really don't know. But I love this movie personally. I'm not sure about you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, definitely. This is when it comes to, the famous comedic movies, Mel Brooks. This is my favorite, hands down.
Okay, see, I can't put this as my favorite Mel Brooks movie.
Which one?
I would.
I know which one's your favorite.
I don't think you do, unless I've told you before, which I very well might have.
The sheriff.
What's that?
Does it involve a sheriff?
That would be probably my second favorite.
What's your favorite then?
Young Frankenstein, dude.
Oh yeah.
I fucking love that movie.
Honestly, that's a lot of people's favorite, and I believe Quentin Tarantino, it's on his list of perfect movies.
I love that movie. It's fantastic.
It's funny. I love Gene Wilder. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. But I'm such a Star Wars fan, especially growing up, that this one just hit way harder for me.
Yeah. Now, I will say, before we go into this, I kind of think maybe we should... I was thinking maybe we'd go into a little bit of our own personal background with Star Wars itself before we actually get into this. Do you remember, like, you said you were a big Star Wars fan as a kid. Yeah. How early do you remember watching? Like, I'm guessing your dad showed them to you just like mine did. Were you a little kid, or were you a little bit older?
I'm pretty sure I was a very, very little kid, because I remember watching Star Wars like very, very young. I remember knowing, I just didn't know exactly what age, but I know when, and this is showing my age, they had a special edition VHS. Was it a 3-pack with the original trilogy?
Yep, I own it. It's sitting on my bookshelf right now.
And I know I was probably around 10. And I definitely have seen Star Wars, but definitely before that, because I was super hype and I knew all the characters and all that. So it was definitely even before 10. So I would have to say, probably around like 4 or 5.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember exactly how old I was. I do know that my dad got that box set. I know for a fact that I saw it before 97. So I was in 97. I was 11, and I know I saw it before then because that's when they did the re-release, and they came out with those box sets that were like the gold and the silver, and that's not the one that I grew up with.
Had that gold, baby.
I disavow those fucking re-releases just as so many fans of the originals do. But the box set I had And like I said, I have a copy of it now, the same one that I grew up with. My dad showed that to me and my brother, and I remember him sitting us down, and he didn't really explain a ton of it, but he just kind of gave us a basic outline of what it was. And I remember the first time I saw the original Star Wars, I hated it.
The hell?
I know. Like
Oh,
I watched it and I was like, this is dumb. I have no interest in this, whatever. And I literally walked out of the room. And then for whatever reason, I think it would have been a few weeks or a few months later, I went back and I said, I'm gonna give this another shot. And I watched and I'm pretty sure I watched it by myself and I just completely fell in love with it. The characters, the story, um, the sci-fi-ness of it.
who's your favorite character?
My favorite character is probably Han, and
Han Solo.
I think it's Han Solo, and I think a lot of it, I mean, honestly, part of that might also be because I love Harrison Ford, especially even as Indiana Jones too, and I watched those at probably around the same time. So it might have influenced me a little bit, but I will say in close second to him throughout the whole series, like all three of the original trilogy, I'm a huge fan of Lando Calrissian.
Yeah.
I love Billy D. He's
Yeah.
so good in that movie.
Yeah, that's probably
The second and third movies.
I got like honestly it it's kind of cheating, but it's like a three-way tie for first place for me.
Han, Luke, and Lando.
No, close. Luke, Lando, and R2D2. I fucking love R2D2, bro.
Yeah, that's I do I'm a big fan of R2 as well. I can't stand 3PO.
Hell no.
And yet
He's okay, small bursts, but it's like you pan the camera on him too long with too many lines, and it gets annoying.
I found the thing that really irritated me with him especially in the original trilogy is when they would do all the slapsticky stuff, like when in Empire when he goes in the room and then Chewie finds him in pieces and he basically has him in a backpack. And
Yeah, I don't mind that. I like that.
That stuff to me I was never a really big fan of.
That-
The only time I really liked 3PO is in Return of the Jedi when he's telling the story to the Ewoks and he's doing all the sound effects and stuff like that. Was really the only time I was really into him.
He's got his moments. He's got very few moments. Like what was it? Attack of the Clones. Was he in Attack of the Clones?
He's in all 9.
Yeah, Attack of the Clones when he's like
do not say the droid, the factory.
I don't mind that goofiness. I don't mind that silliness.
That
I don't mind it.
Did you know that scene was reshot after the movie had wrapped?
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Yeah, they went back and George Lucas was like, "Yeah, I want to reshoot this and I want to shoot this and add this whole scene in." And fucking George Lucas, man.
Hey, Spaceballs is my favorite Mel Brooks movie, and this movie is silly as shit and super cheesy. So yeah, it shaped my humor to be more like in favor of the silly, cheesy kind of type of humor, man. So,
yeah, but this movie's supposed to be silly and cheesy. It's a parody. It's a comedy.
True.
And now there are many funny moments throughout the Star Wars saga. I get it. Yeah, there are just certain things irritant, but I mean, I'm sure you and I could talk about this series for hours, but we have to get back into talking about this movie. So, like I said, we are talking today about Spaceballs. This movie was originally released on June 24th of 1987. It was written by Mel Brooks, Thomas Meehan, and Ronnie Graham, and directed by Mel Brooks. It is starring Bill Pullman, Rick Moranis, John Candy, Joan Rivers, and Mel Brooks himself.
I was about to say that.
Mel Brooks
And
is in
Mel
all of
Brooks, Mel
Mel
Brooks,
Brooks
because
is in all of his movies.
he's like fucking. What's he? He's definitely two characters at least.
Yeah, he's President Scroob and he's Yogurt.
Is he any other characters? He's just two
I
characters, right?
don't believe so. I think he's just those two. This movie currently has a 7.1 out of 10 rating on IMDb, and on Rotten Tomatoes, it is considered a rotten movie. As a critic, it has a critic score of 52%, but the audience score brings it home with an 83, which is, I think, is a lot closer to what it should be at, because if you look at this movie in strict terms of entertainment, this movie is definitely belongs closer to 83 than it does 52.
Yeah, and again, it goes to show that there's definitely needs to be some sort of different scaling when it comes to critiques, like the real professional critiques in comedic movies, because you can't compare this movie to like a Schindler's List. You
No,
just it can't be graded in the same scale. It
well,
has to
it's
be rated, right? And I think that's what a lot of those people, those critics, go into these type of movies with that type of mindset. They won't expect a film, not a turn your brain off silly movie. It sucks, man. And I just feel like that goes with a lot of the those type of ratings.
well, I think it goes back to what I've said many times in this podcast and even off this podcast. There's a big difference between a good movie and an entertaining movie. Now, like you say, Schindler's List or Shawshank Redemption or movies like that, those are great films. Movies like Spaceballs are incredibly entertaining movies. But people don't say that, so they just say, "Oh, it's a great movie." But you're not. No one in their right mind would compare this to something like those movies.
Yeah,
And
it's
there's
still,
nothing. The only thing you can compare is, yes, they're both films with actors. Other than that, the comparisons end.
mhm,
But
exactly.
and I
Especially
mean,
with this
I mean,
movie.
and then this movie ended up, it had an estimated budget of 22.7 million, and it made just over 38. So not a great return, but in 1987, I don't think that was too horrible. Now, we just talked about when we first watched the original Star Wars. When did you first see this movie? Because I definitely didn't see this in theaters. I was one when this came out, or not even one.
I was thinking about it. I had to have seen this on like a weekend on TV, 'cause, during the 90s and early 2000s, if you had cable, um, on the weekends they played a lot of movies on a lot of different stations. And I definitely feel like I caught this on one of those channels.
Yeah, this definitely wasn't my first Mel Brooks movie that I ever saw. That would be Blazing Saddles. My So I will preface this: Blazing Saddles is my father's favorite movie of all time.
Racist. No.
And growing up, he tried to convince me to watch it because I get my sense of humor from my dad. He introduced me to all those old comedies that I still love to this day, and he tried for a long time to get me to watch Blazing Saddles, and I kept saying no. I have no interest. I don't like. I'm not a big fan of westerns. This and that. And then we happened to be on vacation, and he found it and bought it, and we watched it as like a family movie night. And my brother, myself, and a buddy of ours, we were rolling around on the floor laughing, and that was my first introduction to Mel Brooks. And then after that, I watched his other movies like Young Frankenstein, Robin Hood Men in Tights, The Producers, and that's when I saw Spaceballs. And from day one, from the first day I saw this movie, I've been a huge fan of this movie and most of Mel Brooks's stuff. It's just that type of comedy that gets me, and I could watch almost any of his movies just over and over and over, and a lot of them I have done that.
Yeah, I haven't really revisited a lot of his movies other than Spaceballs, if I'm being honest.
No Men in Tights, a young Dave Chappelle.
Because much like, just like you mentioned, how your father shaped your humor and, interest in comedic movies, my, same goes for me with my father. And he didn't really watch any of these movies.
No, your dad
And
wasn't what they call a stupid comedy guy.
he liked stupid comedies, don't get me wrong. And he had like a library of DVDs at the time. He's a
Mhm.
real fan of movies, but I don't think many Mel Brooks movies were in his collection for whatever reason. I never really talked to him about it, but it just wasn't. I have no idea why. So I just wasn't.
You weren't exposed to it.
No, not until much later when I watched it on my own.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Now, for those of you who have never seen this movie, it's a pretty I wouldn't say a blatant ripoff, obviously, because that's what a parody is. But basically, this movie, I'm going to read the IMDb description of this movie, and it doesn't it does it justice, but not quite enough. It says a star
Hard to
pilot.
put it in an explanation.
That's kind of where I'm having trouble. So that's why I'm going to read this, and then we can kind of build on it from there. It says a star pilot for hire and his trusty sidekick must come to the rescue of a princess and save planet Druidia from the clutches of the evil Spaceballs. Now that doesn't tell you that Spaceballs are a people who live on a planet called Planet Spaceball. It also doesn't tell you that the reason that they have kidnapped this princess is because the premise is so ridiculous. They want the access code to the air shield that is around planet Druidia because Spaceballs has used up all of their air, their oxygen. So they want to steal it from planet Druidia and are holding the princess hostage and ransoming the air.
Sure.
It's so fucking ridiculous, the premise of this movie.
This entire movie, honestly, is like, and I understand now, like, because this movie basically throughout, like, they're like dad jokes. This is all dad humor, man.
A lot of it is, yeah.
A lot of it. And yeah, humor that, because of the early 2000s style of comedies and kind of transferred over to the comedies now. Um, if you're used to those movies, you would look at this as very, very corny and cheesy. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, like you say, dad jokes. One of the notes I have written on here is
Not bad. Not bad. Some of
no,
them
no, no,
are
no, not bad
okay.
at all. But like one of the notes I have written is we're gonna okay in movies like Star Wars and Star Trek and things like that, they're flying around in actual spaceships. In this movie, the princess is flying around in basically what looks like a car, and they even say it's a Mercedes. And our hero, Bill Pullman, who plays the character Lone Star, he flies around in a Winnebago with wings. And the dad joke that I'm referring to is they have a bumper sticker on the back of the Winnebago that says "I love Uranus." Pretty early, yeah. It's one of the first. It's when you first see him and his partner, who we'll get to in a few minutes. I don't know necessarily if we need to really go through this movie point by point. This movie feels like a group of SNL sketches just kind of pieced together into a movie, which is fine. I mean, that's kind of what a lot of parody films are, anyways.
Yeah, it reminds me of kind of like a less, a less jokey, uh, like Airplane.
Yeah,
It had that same style, that same vibe.
it's that
I know Airplane was just throwing out jokes like like left and right every 5 seconds type stuff. So I know it had a lot of less humor or like in your face, like one after the other type jokes, but it definitely had that same type of the feel. Again, I haven't seen Airplane in a very long time.
Well, the thing with Airplane is, like you say, it's just constant jokes. Where at least this movie, they try and have a little bit of an emotional story,
They try,
with the romance between Lone Star and Princess Vespa.
but what they do in this movie, the jokes, especially with the fourth wall breaking,
I love those though.
it all of that, especially tied with one of like my favorite character and my favorite actor's performance. It just it the rest of this like the story, the entire story kind of took a back seat. You don't even really care at some point what you don't even know you don't even care about the story
No, you want the gags.
aspects of or at least there's scenes in the movie.
Well, why don't we kick off? What are some of your favorite, I guess if we're going to call these skits or sketches, type segments of the movie? What are some of your favorites?
Um Pretty much a lot of like the fourth wall breaking type moments, especially when they have to do with like the merchandise. Uh Only because I know that the reason why they kind of made it a joke in the movie is because they brought this movie over to George Lucas to see if he approved of it or just his opinion, and he approved. He was okay with it under
As
a couple.
long as, yeah, I
There's,
read this story.
yeah, there was a couple conditions, and one of them being there couldn't be no merchandise from this movie, which is
So that,
why they, again, that's probably why they didn't make as much money as they probably would if they did.
yeah, so they just make all the merchandise and just advertise it in the movie instead of selling it, and they use it as a gag. And I thought it was a great gag
It is
because it's
definitely.
because it's something that, well, once it shows up when Yogurt is explaining all of it, and he's like, "Oh, we've got the T-shirt, the lunchbox," and I love when he goes, "The Spaceballs flamethrower." The kids love this one,
Oh, of course.
and and then it continues through the movie. I mean, you see in a later scene, Mel Brooks again as the president is in bed with two women, and it's Spaceballs the bed sheet, and later it's Spaceballs the toilet paper, and the movie's littered with things like that after they originally or initially introduce the merchandise, and I think it's a really effective through line or through joke throughout the movie.
Absolutely. But my favorite, I would say my favorite of all time, more will come to me. I should have written down the those exact type of moments. But my favorite of all time is the comb the desert scene. That's one of the funniest scenes, quite practically, of any comedy.
Yeah, I love that scene.
Because they say that in the original Star Wars movie. They do say comb the desert.
Yep.
So, and I didn't realize that until I like rewatched Star Wars after watching this one. I was like, oh, okay, that's clever. They did say that in Star Wars. But just the way they went about it is they pan over to the one.
It's the third one.
Because it's so funny. They didn't need to do it. And it was because the first set of gentlemen, they're Caucasian, and they said they didn't find anything. And then the second set were also Caucasian, and they had a regular style comb. And then they pan over to the third pairing of gentlemen, and they are African American. And instead of having a comb, they had basically the black culture equivalent to the comb, which is an afro pick. It's so small. It was so funny and unexpected that it just, I dare you to watch that and not at least chuckle at it.
For me, that whole thing, it's when they say, "Have you found anything?" "Not yet, sir, not." And then they ask those two guys, "Have you found anything?" It's the line that he gives is what kills me, because I say it to this day. If I'm looking for something and somebody asks me if I found it.
And it's even funnier when you know the actor that says that line. And you
Who
know
is
him.
it?
I don't know his name, but I know he is the Black Vulcan in Star Trek. I don't know if it's Deep Space Nine or the Next Generation. What was after Next Generation?
Voyager.
Yeah, it was either Voyager or Deep Space Nine.
We
But
are
it was
nerds.
he was the Black Vulcan, okay? As I think there's
I know exactly who you're talking about, and I cannot remember his name.
yeah. So it adds a little bit extra to it for sure. And another one, one of my favorites is
Well, you got to say the line.
"Oh, we ain't found shit." Just the way he said it was so
Well,
earnest.
because Dark Helmet, who's Rick Moranis, and Colonel Sanders are in like a speeder on the top of a sand dune, just staring down with the binoculars, and he looks up so annoyed and irritated. He's like, "We ain't found shit." Like, are you kidding me?
Because they have such a small.
Well, and also if you look at what they're doing, the combs are like half an inch into the sand. You're not going to find anything anyways, and even the whole premise of it is ridiculous. Like, what are we doing out here?
Yeah, it was so funny. Everything about that scene. And the other one is when there's a lot more, but the one that I have to mention is when they I forget the word that they use, but like teleport. What was it
The beaming.
Beaming?
Like
He
in
was
Star
like,
Trek.
yeah, they beam him, and then his fucking head's backwards. That's funny. But it's not that. It's when he's like, enough with the beaming. I'll just walk there, and it's literally in the next room.
Yeah, he steps off the
transporter. He didn't have to beam at all. He could have just fucking walked.
Yeah, he steps off the transporter and takes literally 2 steps, and the door slides open.
It's that type of silly, stupid, cheesy type of humor that I grew up with. I like it.
I was cracking up all through this movie.
Oh, for sure.
And
there's a lot of lines that were kind of, were like, it didn't really hit as much as when I was a kid, but overall, yeah, I very much enjoyed the bulk of the humor in this movie still.
Yeah. Well, like even that scene, I don't think I had caught that before when they're doing the whole beaming thing. Mel Brooks' character, President Scroob, he actually says, because he's like, is beaming safe and this and that, and instead of Scotty, it's the character's name who's doing it. His name's Snotty, which I found kind of amusing. I'm ashamed to say it, but I did. He's like, is it safe? She's like, oh yeah, it's perfectly safe, this and that. And Mel Brooks literally goes, oh, why not? It works on Star Trek.
Okay.
And I never caught that line until this rewatch.
Yeah. No, I didn't catch it. I'd have to rewatch it to catch it, to be honest. I don't think I caught it.
I will say two of my favorite scenes that they do. One is in my research, I found that this scene was not actually in the screenplay, but Mel Brooks came up with the idea and told Rick Moranis to do it, and he improvised the entire scene. And it's when he's playing with his dolls.
Yeah, didn't he tell him just do something funny?
Yeah, and he does out the whole thing of like Vespa and Dark Helmet, and he's like, and then like attacking Lone Star, and then It's just I love that scene, and then Colonel Sanders comes in and he's like, he quickly grabs the dolls. He's like, knock on my door. You didn't see anything, did you? And he goes, no, sir, I didn't see you playing with your dolls.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah,
the other, I
it's
mean,
a lot.
the ludicrous speed scene is good, but for me,
Yeah,
the one of the best scenes of this entire movie is when they do the radar, when they're gonna watch radar. Or no, sorry, sorry. I apologize. Not the radar. When they get the movie off of the rental shelf,
of course.
and I don't know why that cracks me up so much, but if anybody out there hasn't seen it, when they do this, they literally put in a copy of Spaceballs the movie, and they fast forward it to the point right where they're at in the movie. So it's like you're looking, if you see ever seen those shots where people have mirrors on either side of them and it looks like it goes on forever. That's what it looks like, because you're through the camera into a screen, which is also through a camera into a screen, and it just repeats over and over. And the dialogue between them throughout that whole scene, to me, is just hysterical. And it's probably the most fourth wall breaking that you can possibly do, and they do it flawlessly, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's peak fourth wall break. Deadpool would be jealous.
100%. This is the blueprint of how to do it. So,
Yeah,
so you have said in the past that Rick Moranis is your favorite actor. Have you not?
he's up there, man. He is up there. And
He brought it in this movie. Like, he was going full tilt.
and the thing about him is almost every role he in movies, he's absolutely one of the shining things about that movie, man. And it sucks because we all respect him, for stepping away,
To raise his family.
but it sucks that he did that only because of what could have been, the roles that he could have took on. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that we at least got the roles that we do have with him in it, and because he kills everything, man. He can do no wrong in my eyes. He's just an amazing actor, man. Canadian too, which is
I will
just
say the one movie of his that I've actually never seen, that I've wanted to watch for quite a few years. I don't know why I haven't watched it, because I'm also a fan of musicals, is Little Shop of Horrors. And
yeah.
I've heard
That's like
so many good
have
things about that movie.
yeah, it's the one movie of his I haven't seen only because I'm not a fan of musicals, and yeah, it's kind of a deal breaker for me.
See, I really enjoy musicals. I don't know why, but
I'll get
personally,
away.
I like them.
Yeah, I can only deal with some unless it's like a Disney movie or Willy Wonka / Wizard of Oz, or I Grease too. There's few that slip through, but the bulk of them.
Hold on. Did you mean Grease as well, or the film Grease 2?
No, Grease the film
Oh,
as
thank
well.
God.
I've seen Grease.
I was gonna call a lot of your opinions in question if you meant Grease 2.
Hey, isn't Michelle Pfeiffer in Grease too? She was
Yeah,
hot.
yes, she is. I've never seen the movie, but I've never heard a good thing about it either. So you brought up the thing about George Lucas. I have this thing that I found doing some research, and I don't know if this has ever been actually proven, because it just says according to Mel Brooks, but it says according to Mel Brooks, George Lucas loved the movie and wrote
Okay.
him a letter after the premiere saying he thought he was going to bust something from laughing so hard.
I
Now,
get.
if that's true, I don't know if Mel Brooks could have received a more positive. affirmation about the reception of this movie. If you can take somebody's work and do what he did to it and then get them to like it and praise you for it, I think that's a hell of an accomplishment, especially something as massive as Star Wars.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And especially at that time when there were so many blatant, legit ripoffs that almost seem as cheesy as Spaceballs. So, to get that um, stamp of approval of George Lucas is definitely a big deal at the time.
Yeah. And see, when I was younger, when I first watched this movie, I thought this was made a lot later than it was. So I thought this movie came out in like almost the mid 90s, like 94 ish. I didn't realize it was 87. I thought this movie just came out like Bill Pullman. I know Bill Pullman mainly from Independence Day, which I believe was 96. So I thought this movie just came out a couple years before Independence Day. I didn't even realize until much later in life that this movie was as old as it was. So this was made just 4 years after Return of the Jedi came out. So I guess it was that strike while the iron is hot kind of thing while it's still a buzz. I mean, it's a buzz forever because it's Star Wars, but I think it was really smart to do it the way they did it when they did. And another thing is I was rewatching this, and this could also just go back to me being a movie nerd, and especially with a movie like Independence Day. The scene just before they crash land on, I believe they say it's Vega, which is the sand planet, I guess, almost like a Tatooine. Is Lone Star refers to their ship as Eagle 5. And as soon as he said it, I went, that sounds really familiar. So I looked it up. And sure enough, when he plays the president in Independence Day and he goes in the fighter jet, his call sign is Eagle 5 as a callback to this movie. I thought that was a kind of a neat thing that I didn't realize until I just watched it this rewatch.
Okay, hey, that's kind of cool.
Because as soon as he said Eagle 5, I was waiting for him to say like Fox 3, like he does in Independence Day when he fires the missiles, and I went, "Hey, that sounds really." I think that's the same call sign that he uses, and I looked it up, and sure enough, it was.
He's also in one. If you're a '90s kid, he's also plays a pivotal role in a movie, a child's movie. Can you name it?
With Bill. Oh, Casper.
Yeah.
That movie is wild.
I feel like I haven't seen it besides like maybe a clip here or two on YouTube the last couple years. I haven't seen it in its entirety in quite a long time. I feel like I would enjoy it.
I think I would enjoy it mainly for the nostalgia. I don't know if I would still enjoy the movie itself. But I really honestly have no idea.
But yeah, I mean, yeah. So if you knew Bill, was it Pullman?
Bill Pullman, not Bill Paxton.
Oh, I have to like literally concentrate on the last name. Yeah, you know him from those three roles.
Yeah, pretty much. And I will say, when I was younger, I used to confuse him with Alec Baldwin in Beetlejuice. Only that role, though.
I could see that.
Like every other role, it was like, well, that's Alec Baldwin. But for some reason, him in Beetlejuice, and I don't know if it's I think it's the glasses.
The glasses didn't he have blonde hair, which he doesn't.
He had blonde-ish hair, yeah.
He didn't really look like his natural self.
No, not at all.
So I could see the confusion.
I completely forgot when we were talking about best scenes in the asshole scene.
That one's that okay.
I still
One
laughed
of
my
the
ass
ones
off.
was like, okay, this one was not my favorite.
I
I
think the
kind of like chuckled like under my breath.
oh, I laughed my ass off, and I think the reason I did is because when I was younger, for some reason, like I said, around age 12 or 13 or something like that, when I first saw this movie, a lot of my friends growing up in school watched the movie around the same time. And I remember we did that the one day in class. Like, I don't know. I don't remember how it, like, it wasn't the teacher, obviously, who started it, but one of the kids in class kind of started doing the quotes, like, what's his name? Oh, he's an asshole, and he was hired by this guy. He's also an asshole. And then he would go, "How many assholes do we got?" And our whole class would go, "Yo!" So I think that adds to it. But yeah, I think that scene is remarkably funny. Probably a lot funnier than it. I probably find it a lot funnier than it actually is. But that's just another
I
thing
mean,
from this movie that I just love.
comedy is objective, so it's all fair game. But that one, yeah, you found it a lot funnier than I did for sure.
Yeah. One and my favorite my favorite line in this movie, and it I think it has been my favorite line since the first time I saw it, is John Candy, who is another absolute legend of the screen, and he's so good in this movie as he plays Barf.
Hmm. Half man, half
he,
dog.
he's the the Chewbacca substitute, and
The
it's
mall.
it's a Mog. It's the scene when they're rescuing the princess and he opens like the sunroof, which number one, apparently he can just breathe in space because he climbs down a ladder onto their car. But he opens the thing and who are you? And he just goes barf. And he goes, I'm a Mog, half man, half dog. I'm my own best friend.
Hmm.
I don't know why that line has always cracked me up, but it's my favorite line in the entire movie.
Hmm. Yeah, you told me this.
And it might be because it's delivered by John Candy. I mean, the man is he's an absolute legend, and he's another one that we lost way too young. And I mean I would put him if John Candy wouldn't have passed away, I think he probably might have gone down as one of the top two or three comedic actors of all time, in my own personal opinion.
He,
I think he had that kind of talent.
I mean, if you want to like speak technical, I would say like, was it Jackie Gleason is like the first big guy, funny guy. But I think in the more modern era, especially a lot of the actors that are bigger um after John Candy, I think John Candy definitely was like one of the ones that kind of set the tone for a lot of like
Yeah, I feel like he cracked the door open and Chris Farley plowed his way through it.
yeah, and then exactly there was like an evolution of that actor character archetype, and it I think it's yeah the more in the modern era, uh, John Candy definitely was carrying it before you got to like the Chris Farleys and then the Jack Blacks and
Yeah,
what
those two guys kind of just took his ball and ran with it.
yeah,
But
but before
those two guys were much more vulgar. John Candy had a way of doing it without being a vulgar idiot like those two.
no, or like super spazzy, high energy
That's what.
kind of
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant.
yeah 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 yeah. But he's still like yeah he was casting a lot of his roles, or at least the joke was he was the bigger gentleman, and he was like the big, funny, comedic actor at the time. So he was, he was that one in during the 80s. But when it comes to comedic and just overall acting skills, I think he's the best. I think he's amazing.
Yeah.
It wasn't an immense talent.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. Could not agree more. Now, when people talk about this movie, they always reference it as almost a direct parody of Star Wars. And I mean, it's been years since I've watched this movie, and I kind of thought that way in my head, and then I turned it on and I went, it's nowhere near a direct parody. Like, there's no Luke character. I mean, obviously, Lone Star is Han, Barf is Chewie, and then you've got Princess Vespa would be Leia, and then the character that I would much rather prefer over C-3PO is Joan Rivers as Dot Matrix.
Yeah. I mean,
I think I loved her in this movie. I think she's hysterical at that part.
Yeah. She's really fun. And like one of many, because Mel Brooks is of Jewish heritage. There was a lot of like Jewish, I wouldn't say stereotypes, but yeah, lack of better words, like stereotypes / Jewish based little Jews. And she played like the stereotypical, at least Jewish, almost
like a mother figure.
Yeah, at least her voice was very, very stereotypical Jewish.
Well, they did that even throughout because they're from planet Druidia, and they constantly refer them as Druish.
Exactly.
So there's things like that, and then like
they mention like one of the lines is like, "Oh, she doesn't look Jewish."
I was just gonna say that, and John Candy does it right to the camera.
So there's subtle little references there.
Well, we brought up earlier the straight ridiculousness of this movie, and I mean, while we're on the subject of character comparisons,
don't do it. Do it. I don't want to talk
with his fucking henchman Vinny.
I don't want to talk about him.
Who is apparently an Italian robot. Nasty. You have Pizza the Hut.
Ugh.
It's disgusting.
One of the most nastiest fucking characters I've ever seen.
I don't know what that white cheese was made out of, but just dripping off of that thing's face was horrifying to watch.
Falling off my guy's face and like stuck on his chin and shit, and shit was oozing out his face.
And then his henchman's like eating him.
What you're saying?
I said, and then you got like his henchman Vinny like eating him. It's disgusting.
Yeah, what the fuck was going on? See, that part I did not like at all.
No, I still to this day I'm like this.
I get it. Pizza the Hut, okay, sure.
No, I don't like it at all.
Kind of look like the character, I guess. But god damn, did you just realize you made the nastiest character in cinema? This motherfucker is gross. Nasty. I guess as a kid, I didn't really care. I recognized that he was gross. But I was a child. I was a gross child. So it not as bad. But rewatching this, oh my gosh. I highly recommend you do not eat pizza before, and you definitely aren't gonna have an appetite for pizza.
I recommend I recommend you skip every scene that he's in.
For sure.
Because here, you want all it is Lone Star owes him I think it's 100,000 what they call space bucks, which I find hilarious. But I think he owes him 100,000 space bucks, and he wants his money. The end. That's all you need to know. There you go. You don't have to watch Pizza the Hut.
Right. I understand what they were going for. because the joke's right there, right? But still, like, you could have designed the character a little bit less nasty. God damn, man.
Well, and I mean, like, yeah, he's really hard to look at, but like I say, you go back to the absurdity and the ridiculousness of this movie. You have him, and then I love the fact that the movie is a like I said earlier, the premise of this movie is about stealing oxygen, which is just insane. But I will say that I did chuckle at the scene when President Scrooge opens his drawer and he takes out a can of Perry Air, and it's literally he just cracks the can and starts sniffing it because it's fresh, pure air, and it says right on it, canned in Druidia or on Druidia, whatever. Like that, I wouldn't say it was hilarious, but I got a little chuckle out of it.
Oh, yeah,
It
it was fine.
the big thing I did not get a chuckle out of, and I kind of found really stupid, is when they do sorry, excuse me, when they do end up at Planet Druidia near the end of the movie and they're going to suck up the air through the I keep forgetting what they call it, the door, I guess, to the air shield, and the villain, the dark helmet ship turns, like, it rotates, and it's a giant maid with a vacuum cleaner. So you're chuckling. I didn't find it that funny. I found it kind of stupid.
It is. That's why I find, because it is stupid. See, I understand that. Yeah, it is stupid, and it's not fun. I guess I find it unintentionally, even just funny, even though they were intentionally being funny. I don't know, man. Maybe it is intentionally funny for me. I was chuckling, laughing, but I was like, I gave a little, just a small little chuckle.
Well, I mean, I was doing the same thing when they do
I didn't dislike it.
well, like the chuckle laugh. I was doing the same kind of thing when they do the ludicrous speed gag, and they, quote unquote, as they say in the movie, they go to plaid.
I had a little bit harder chuckle because I think that scene ends with
The ending is good.
fucking this character flying it through the fucking crashing into a wall.
But it's not even, like, for me, it's not even the fact of him hitting the wall. It's what he does after that. When they all rush over and he's standing up and his gigantic helmet is, like, completely crushed in, almost flat on top from the impact. And he's like, they're like, "Sir, are you okay?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm doing great." And one of the lenses on his glasses is broken. And they're like, "What do we do next?" And he goes, "Well, why doesn't everybody just take a 5-minute break?" And he goes, "Smoke him if you got him," and then just passes out. I found that so funny.
Yeah. And again, I don't think he completely carries the movie, but 100% Rick Moranis steals the show.
It's an entirely different movie if any character is recast differently.
I feel like, except for the Bill Pullman's character, I think he could have been played by really any type of character that is fits the description of like a handsome man that can play like a bit of a scoundrel. I think you could have replaced his character and it could have been the same movie. But yeah, I agree with you. If you replace anybody else, it would have been a different movie. Especially, I think if you replaced Rick Moranis, it wouldn't have been as beloved.
No, I feel like if you replace either Rick Moranis or John Candy, the two big comedic leads, because Bill Pullman is very much a straight man in this movie, as is Colonel Sanders is. He's the straight man to Rick Moranis's ridiculousness. And the guy who plays him, I had his name here just a second ago, but I think he does a really good job as well. That actor's name is George Weiner, who I've seen it in several other things actually.
He's that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. You know who else is that guy? Mr. Sound Effects himself, Police Academy's own Michael Winslow.
For sure.
I love him in there. Like, the talent that this guy has for sound effects is unreal.
Yeah. A lot of people don't even know his name. They just call him like the sound effects guy or Police Academy.
Yeah. And I found this out. I found this out years ago, and I've always been a little bit. I don't know why, but I like finding out what celebrities I share a birthday with, and Michael Winslow and I same birthday. I don't know why that's always been something I've been fascinated with. Like, oh, I wonder what famous person shares my like it fucking matters, but it's something I've always been intrigued by.
For sure. No, that one's pretty cool. The Man of 10,000 Sounds.
Just hearing what he does, like in whether it be this movie or Police Academy, it's an unreal talent that I couldn't even begin to understand how he figured that out or how hard he worked to perfect it.
It's you gotta love doing it, and you gotta be obsessed over it to get to that level.
Yeah,
for sure, and very talented. I mean, it has to be like at least a little bit of all three of those.
Now we talked a little bit about Mel Brooks playing the president. What did you think of him as Yogurt, the obvious Yoda stand-in?
Love Yogurt, man. Yogurt, bro. He's definitely top probably 3 characters for me in this movie. I don't know why. Just because I kind of like Yoda. Character he's spoofing. And,
you just kind of like Yoda.
Oh, yeah. Because there's a whole lot of characters who he's okay. He's okay. He's not one of my like favorites. He's top 10 though. But Yogurt though, I just really enjoy the way Mel Brooks plays this character.
Yeah, he's really good. He really emphasizes his Jewish accent playing this character.
For sure.
Especially when he starts doing the merchandising stuff.
Yeah.
And I like when the Schwartz, this ancient power and John Candy. The Force? No, the Schwartz.
See, the thing is, this movie does have a whole lot of like jokes involving like sex and like dick jokes.
Oh, absolutely.
They're somewhat subtle. At least compared to the movies that we got in the early or later end of the 2000s there. Like
those are just straight out like obvious.
Exactly.
Smack you in the face, for lack of a better term.
And a lot of and it seems like that's like the direction of the comedy movies and spoofs nowadays. It's like how raunchy with the sexual angle jokes can we get away with? And they had them in Spaceballs for sure, but they just weren't as crude and in your face and blunt about it. But they still had them
until the end when they start basically sword fighting with their dicks.
Well, that's how you activate the light, or I don't even know. They didn't even call it anything.
No, because I don't think they could call it a lightsaber because it would have been copyrighted.
Exactly, but they didn't call it anything. You could have called it a light anything. They just didn't call it anything.
They just called it the Schwartz.
Yeah, the Schwartz was all encompassing ring power.
And yet at the end, Lone Star doesn't even need the ring to do it.
Yeah, he has
it's in him.
It's fucking telekinetic. Without it.
Well, yeah,
that's pretty.
because earlier when Yogurt's like quote unquote training him, it makes it seem like he needs the ring on
Yeah, that's what it seemed
in
like.
order to do it, and then later in the movie when Dark Helmet, I think I forget if he just drops it down a vent or what he does with the ring, and you hear Yogurt's voice kind of telling him like, "No, the Schwartz is inside you. You don't need the ring, whatever." And it's like, well, then what the fuck was the whole point of it? Is it just a giant placebo effect? Like,
I guess whatever. Or like at the very end where he was it a fortune cookie he gave him or candy?
yeah, it was a fortune cookie.
And he opens it and then he comes out and he says he's a prince.
So he's allowed to marry. So that's how the movie kind of starts. As Princess Vespa is being forced to marry, who apparently is they say he's the last prince in the galaxy. Which, okay,
Right.
but she doesn't want to marry him, so she leaves, and that's how it kind of all gets started.
Yeah, that guy kind of like
Prince Valium.
yeah. Yeah, he was something. He was definitely something. He looked like a blonde taller Farquhar from fucking Shrek.
Yeah, he did have that energy to him.
At least his hair. I know they had the same hairs the hairdo. But yeah, no, he that whole thing. Yeah, it's like that's what I'm saying. Like the plot definitely is set aside through a large part of this movie, even though the movie does advance the plot. You're not at some point. You don't even really forget the what's even happening at some point because of the a lot of like the big jokes with the fourth wall breaking moments and the comedic, just the comedy. Like the plot is such nothing.
I think the one joke that really for me pushed it over the top and was like kind of like you were saying, like the plot doesn't matter so much anymore, was when they jam the radar, which I still think is hilarious.
Yeah,
They just shoot the giant jar of jam.
gas jar jam, and like
But
that again. That's one of those dad jokes, stupid but still funny.
well, and then you follow it up with when he tastes it and he goes, "Who would dare give me the raspberry?" And I love whenever he lowers the visor of his mask, his voice goes deeper.
Yeah.
And he says Lone Star, and that's the point when the camera, this is again really fourth wall breaking because the camera pushes in to the point where it hits him and knocks him over.
Exactly. They had another one where they're fighting each other, Dark Helmet and Bill Pullman's character. And I think Moran's character, he like goes for a swing and he misses and then like hits one of like the boom mic guys
Oh yeah.
on set, and then he blames fucking Bill Pullman.
Well, that's kind of a Mel Brooks staple to do stuff like that. I mean, in Blazing Saddles, you literally have the guys come off set, and the fight that's going on in the movie spills over to different movie sets and to like the studio cafeteria and things like that. And then in Robin Hood Men in Tights, when you have Maid Marian singing and the camera's outside the castle and it's panning in towards the window, when it cuts to her in the room, you hear glass breaking and the camera turns and there's a camera that's broken through the window. So it's a real Mel Brooks staple. Just like I think in every movie of his that I can remember off the top of my head, they do the Walk This Way, which he does as Yogurt before they go to the merchandise. It's these are just like staples of his career that he just kind of continuously brings to every movie, and I think a lot of his fans look forward to those. I don't think we will be any more. I mean, the man's in his 90s. I don't think he's making any more movies coming up, but
Yeah, it's like his trademark kind of is that type of joke in all his movies.
Yeah.
There's a trademark from Star Wars, and I think it started in Star Wars, but it has made its way to a lot that I caught that was in this movie, a certain sound effect.
the Wilhelm scream?
Yeah.
Where was it used in this movie? I didn't catch it.
They were in a ship and niggas was shooting. I don't know exactly where. I think it was towards the beginning. I forget, but I know that scream, and I definitely heard
Everybody
it.
knows that scream, yeah.
I definitely heard it at some point in the movie. I couldn't tell you when.
I don't remember hearing that. I will say there is a Star Wars staple that makes an appearance in this movie. I don't know if you caught it or not.
Oh yeah, is there a certain ship?
There is a certain ship. Some might even say the ship. In the parking lot or the parking area, whatever, at the diner, I don't know if anybody out there who watched this movie missed it, but you get to see the Millennium Falcon, which, does that mean that Han and Chewie are in that diner, or is this when Lando owned the Falcon?
Oh. 87. So what?
Would have been Han. Well, if you're going by that timeline, it's 4 years after Return of the Jedi. So maybe it was already on Jakku waiting for Rey and Finn to pick it up.
Yeah, it was on its way, for sure.
We are nerds.
I never caught that as a kid. But I caught it watching it. I was like, oh shit, that's tight. But it makes sense because do you know George Lucas that see a lot of the effects in this movie, especially with the space scenes, are actually very well done. That's because ILM
I was just say, I wonder why.
is behind it. George Lucas gave him allowed his company to work on the film.
But I mean, let's be honest. You could probably name maybe on one, maybe two hands, movies with special effects since Star Wars that haven't used ILM. I mean, even today, they still do the majority of the top special effects work.
Yeah, I mean, if you're deep in the game, there's probably like 3 now. I'm sure there's like a big 3 when it comes to special effects, like powerhouses. Yeah, but they've had the top spot or the most well-known spot for ever.
Yeah, it'll always come back to them. Did you notice in the diner scene with the xenomorph? Did you notice or recognize who that is?
I didn't realize at the time it was the original dude, but
The original what?
the original actor.
Oh, who it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I'm reading this on the IMDb trivia. I did not realize he was knighted, but it's Sir John Hurt, R.I.P.
Okay. No, I didn't. I don't think I watched Aliens. I think I was like in my teens or something like that when I watched Aliens. But
I definitely hadn't seen Aliens before, or Alien before I watched this movie.
But I knew the reference. I definitely knew the reference just because, Alien is so much in the zeitgeist and referenced in a bunch of other things that you definitely recognize it when you see it. But I just didn't know the actor involved in that scene in Spaceballs is the same actor from the original Alien.
Yeah,
and that he says, "Not again,"
And then the xenomorph starts singing "Hello, My Baby" in his best Michigan J. Frog impersonation,
which is like one of those. It's one of those moments where you
I
just go
found it
with
funny.
like, hey, all right.
I found
That's
it funny because I always loved Michigan J. Frog as a kid.
oh, that cartoon was great. It's one of the classics. One of the best ones of all time for sure.
I had a VHS tape of a compilation of all these different Looney Tunes and Warner Brothers cartoons, and that was on there. So I've seen that particular cartoon probably hundreds, if not thousands, of times.
Yeah. Dude, I watched a lot I rewatched some of the old Looney Tunes, specifically the one where Bugs Bunny is just fucking with people. Like a couple weeks ago, I was just, I was, just randomly watching it and yeah, man. It a lot of it a lot of the humor still holds up and a lot of cartoons, sitcoms have ripped off a lot of the stuff that they were doing in those cartoons back in like the 50s.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. But I think I've kind of gone through all of my notes. Like you say, like we said, there's not a whole lot to delve into this movie too deeply. I've kind of exhausted all of the notes that I have. Except, I will say I do have one more that I found kind of funny, and it's when they get the air shield combination, and they get it by threatening to reverse Vespa's nose job.
Oh yeah.
But they get the combination, and he goes, the combination is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Rick Moranis goes, "That's the stupidest combination I've ever heard. That's the kind of that's what some idiot would put on their luggage." And when they go and tell President Scroob what the combination is, he goes, "Oh my God, that's the exact same combination I have on my luggage."
Right? It's like your password being password.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then you realize how many people's password
Is password.
So I have to believe that there's a lot of people's combination out there that's most likely just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
No, password is taco. That's for any of you fans of the show The League out there. You'll get that. You'll get that reference. But yeah, like I said, I think that kind of does it for all my notes. And unless there is something that you wanted to cover,
No, literally all mine are covered.
okay. So I think that'll bring us into our closing thoughts and our ratings. If you wanna take that away.
Yeah. I was a huge fan of this movie growing up, mostly because of how much of a fan of Star Wars I am. And after my rewatch, I would say my feelings are pretty much the same, even though there was a couple bits that I guess I outgrew or didn't land as good as it did when I was a kid. I think that if you were born in like 2000, after 2000, you might not appreciate this movie unless you are really into a lot of like the movies from late 80s, early 90s. So it would be hard for me to recommend that for that demographic. But if you're a little bit older and you do like silly movies, 100%, I would recommend it if you haven't seen this movie, especially if you are into sci-fi and Star Wars. My rating, I think I agree with IMDb. I think I gave it about a 7.
Okay. All right. Yeah. You know what? I pretty much agree with everything you said. I love this movie, and you're right. There are some things that didn't quite hold up from what I found amusing as a kid. But there were also a lot of things that going into this movie I remembered, and I was like, these probably won't hit as well as they did when I was younger, and I couldn't have been more wrong. And I was cracking up, and I was full on laughing out loud during this movie, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with it's the combination of a writer like Mel Brooks and director, and also the comedic juggernauts of Rick Moranis, John Candy, Joan Rivers, all those great actors. And yeah, I would recommend this to anybody. I mean, even if you don't like Star Wars, I think you could still enjoy it because it doesn't only parody Star Wars. There are different films that it takes influence from, and like I said, I would recommend this to anybody and everybody. But as you said, especially if you're a Star Wars fan and you haven't seen this movie, I think you need to get a copy, find this somewhere on streaming, and sit down and have a good night and watch this and have some laughs. And yeah, I'm actually going to give this a rating of about a 7.5. So yeah, right around where IMDb is, and not quite as high as Rotten Tomatoes, but the audience score anyways. But yeah, I think that's a good safe place to put this, and it's definitely worth watching if you haven't seen it, and it's definitely worth a rewatch if you have. So I think that's going to do it for this episode. And as always, give us a follow on our socials, which will be posted in our show notes. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. And next week, we will be back. Oh boy, this is going to be a tough one. So next week is the release of Ryan Reynolds' new movie, If, which actually looks pretty amusing, I think. So we've decided to revisit one of the few Ryan Reynolds failures that have come out over the years, and we're going to go back and we're going to watch DC's The Green Lantern.
In brightest day and blackest night,
no evil shall escape my. God damn it! This is going to be tough. But honestly, I'm willing to go into it with an open mind. I remember really disliking this movie, but there's been a lot of comic book and superhero movies nowadays that people have gushed over that I really don't like. I mean, there's been IP of everything that people have gushed over that I didn't like, and so I'm willing to give this one another shot. But if I don't like it after this time, I don't think I'll ever revisit it again.
Oh yeah, I mean,
my hopes aren't high, but I'm willing to give it a try.
The movie has a bad reputation for sure, but movies, especially Marvel superhero movies, have been straight ass lately, and very, very silly and comedically heavy. I think that you're gonna have a new profound appreciation for Green Lantern.
Well, I hope you're right, because I'd rather enjoy the movie that we're watching than hate and despise it.
I know I could be completely wrong. I could probably hate it more after my, but I'm willing to visit it after all these years.
We're willing to fall on that sword for you, our listeners.
Yeah, that green construct sword.
Oh God. But that's going to be it for us. So until next time, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for subscribing. Take it easy.
Peace.